Hello and welcome to the Meditation Conversation, the podcast to support your spiritual revolution. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and this is a fascinating conversation with Alara Sage. We talk a lot about her Kundalini awakening, what that was like for her, and the ups and downs that followed. She shares some wonderful wisdom about the gifts and sexual energy in the womb and the relationship between the womb and wealth. Alara Sage is an intuitively gifted mentor, womb shaman, and Shakti activator who coaches provocatively and soulfully. She helps men and women heal their sexual trauma, reclaim their creative life force energy, and create the life they desire. So please check out karagoodwin.com where you can get a free 10-minute meditation. If you want support for your meditation practice, I have a 21-day online program to help you develop your own practice. There's also the Healing Hearth membership where you can get live online assistance with your questions about meditation and life. You can also get a personalized recorded meditation/energy transmission to help you get through whatever challenges are showing up in your life. I also have a recorded Sacred Geometry workshop series available. All of that and more on karagoodwin.com. And now enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Alara. I'm so excited to connect with you today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, my love. I'm so happy to be here.
So I would love to start by just talking about your journey and what led to the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, so I had been on a spiritual journey for many years, but in 2013, I had quite a profound spiritual awakening. I was, at the time, I was meditating every day. And I was working on horses. So I was what's called a physical therapist for horses. So I did physical therapy to the horses.
Oh, wow.
And one day I got in my car and I was driving down the road and my higher self came in and said, Om 3 times. And I didn't Om. I mean, I knew what it was, but it wasn't like part of my practice. So I thought that was a little interesting, but I said, sure, okay. I took a nice deep breath. All the way to the end. And I did that 3 times. At the very end of that third Om, an energy shot through my body, went out my crown, and I went into full body orgasm. And luckily I was on a back road.
I was going to say, you're
30
driving. That's not great timing.
Yeah, I don't know why higher self chose then.
Yeah.
So I pulled over and wow, was just really in this energy of full body orgasm. And one of the things that I like to point out is that was a big deal for me because I had actually never full body orgasmed in the act of sex, let alone driving my car down the road. At that time in my life, orgasm was actually quite challenging for me sexually. I was very much shut down in my sexual energy, my sexual power. Orgasm was this very mentalized thing where I had to focus and everything had to be so perfect. And so this was really outside of the box for me. And I had no idea what was happening to me. So I pulled the car over and I was just in this incredible sensation of orgasm. And, and after a couple of minutes, it subsided and I just found myself in a state of ecstatic bliss. I still had no idea what had happened to me. And so I got back on the road and started driving to go work on the horses. And I just remember I just couldn't even sit still. I was dancing. I mean, I was just gritting ear to ear. I had the music turned up. I was waving at everybody in the other car. I was so lit, so lit. And then, the horses really enjoyed it. They just soaked up the energy that day. I mean, they all went into trance. They were all just horses lick and chew when they're processing. They were like licking and chewing and drooling and just,
wow.
They were really loving it. And, the energy subsided by the end of the day. And then what occurred was very intense. For the next 5 months-ish, I found myself in a very chaotic emotional state. Because what had happened to me was I had had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. So Kundalini Shakti had shot through my body, and I had experienced divine union. But again, I was not aware of this. And so also at that time in my life, I really considered myself quite emotionally stable. I was very, quote unquote, calm and peaceful and grounded. Little to my understanding that I was actually shut down. I was actually numb. I was actually emotionally suppressed. So after that Kundalini Shakti woke up in my body, all of those emotions came rip-roaring out of my physical and emotional bodies. And I would go 1 minute, totally fine, to the next minute on the floor, crying with this deep grief and sadness, to the next minute of laughing hysterically, to the next minute of raging, just pure rage and anger moving through my body. And I still had no idea what had happened to me. So I kept checking in, higher self. Am I going crazy? That's what it kind of felt like. And my higher self's response was allow and breathe. And I actually asked that question 2 or 3 times over the next 5 months because it was so intense. And then it started to, subside and started to reach an equilibrium. And at that point, a book came into my space, as does the universe so wonderfully, called Kundalini Awakening. And the first chapter was about spontaneous awakenings. And that's when I realized what had happened to me.
Who's the author of that book? Do you remember?
I don't.
Because I just so happened to have gotten my hands on a book. I want to say it's called Kundalini Exposed, maybe, but it's some random Kundalini book that I'm really enjoying. I can't remember the title precisely, and I have no idea who the author is. So it's just really funny timing when things like that happening. I'm like, is that the book that just showed up for me? Like, I think I ordered it, but I don't even remember why I ordered it or how it came into my view. I don't remember anybody recommending it. And it took me a while to even pick it up to read it, but it's just the book that I'm grabbing kind of on the go right now. It's really easy to read, and I'm enjoying it. So anyway, well, that is fascinating. Talk a little bit more about Kundalini Shakti, in case these are new concepts. You were saying as you're going through it, you had no idea what was going on. So if nobody's heard of this type of energy, this type of activation, tell us what you know now.
Yeah, so Kundalini is also referred to as the coiled serpent. It is the energy prior to the activation. So in the Hindu traditions, it is a serpent energy that is coiled at the base of our bodies. And once activated, it becomes Shakti, which is our primordial femme energy. And regardless of sexual identity, regardless of sexual organs, all human beings have this energy within themselves. And it is, the energy also that is awakening on our planet right now, the return of the femme energy, the return of the divine, the sacred, feminine, various different labels for her. But that return on the planet, also elicits and begins with that return of that energy within ourselves. And so Shakti is creative life force energy. And it's literally the fundamental, vibration of creation itself. It's within everything. And the process of that energy in our own body is once she awakens, she begins her process upward. And for most people, that can take a lifetime. Some people don't even make it all the way to the crown. I think at this time in our evolutionary process, it's happening much more. But she moves up through the chakras. She also moves outside of the body to the Merkaba and to the chakras outside of the body. But the primary focus is the lateral movement, vertical movement up, And she's a deeply healing energy. So in Western medicine, you have the cross with the two snakes. That is the Kundalini symbol. So Western medicine actually acquired that from Kundalini. And, she heals, she liberates, she activates our uh, energetic centers. And ultimately, the process of her is to move vertically up to the crown, where then she meets the god Shiva for divine union. And so this is the union of self.
Okay, thank you. And so for you having that full body orgasm experience while you were driving, was that did that culminate in that meeting of Shiva? Was it just like that kind of complete instant activation, or was that more of over those 5 months, or is it continuing on? What was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I wanted to address that because I've even had some of my own clients say, oh, well, this was all very easy for you. You just had an activation. And that was the beginning of my process. So, yes, the ecstatic bliss that I experienced after she reached my crown is that state of union of self. It is sixth density consciousness where we are totally unified in ourselves and actually with others. We're a true collective consciousness. And it's very ecstatic. However, that was just the beginning of the process for me. And I had to really, again, continue to work with my own body and work with my Shakti. I had to learn what that Shakti was. I had to, after she had that first um, movement through my body, she then broadened her channel and moved much slower. And I had to work with her through the chakras. And then she broadened her channel even more and worked. And each time she's broadened her energy in my space. And I've had to learn how to embody more and more of that vibration. It's been, quite frankly, a lot of discomfort. But that's not normal. The clients I work with and the experiences that they have through me activating their Kundalini Shakti, they don't have the level of discomfort that I had. So for whatever reason, I like to let the listeners know that my experience isn't really the normal. And it's a very, very healing energy. It's nothing that we need to be scared or worried about. But it was just the beginning of my deepening into the embodiment of my feminine power.
Okay. And so, from an energetic perspective, I think it's clear kind of what you went through as this energy moved through you. What was that like in your life? The reflection in your relationships, your career, your intellect, all of your emotion. You talked about the emotions, but how did that change your life experience?
Flipped it upside down on its head, which I had done several times in my life. I'm a changer in human design and Gene Keys. I enjoy that energy of change. But yes, I was married and my partner and I had been together for 12 years. We had a house, I had young children, and I became very aware of the truth that my partner couldn't really evolve in the space that I was evolving very, very quickly. And there was so much going on between us. From the outside, our relationship looked perfect and we got along. We were a great team. We still are a great team. I still love him dearly. We have a great relationship, but I could sense that there was more to my evolution that I needed to explore in a different way. So I got a divorce. I left my house. I left my comfort. At the time I was working with the horses and, making money, but it wasn't like making loads of money. So I had to really go out on a limb there as far as the truth that I can make enough money. And then that even quickly transpired from equine physical therapy into communication into working with people in a matter of like 2 years. I
Wow.
transformed. And so my transformation just exploded. My life exploded. Um, and, because I had gone through massive transition like that before, I did have a sense of conviction of self. I faced a great deal of fear and uncertainty, and yet there was just this deep knowing that I need to make these changes in my life, and it will all be for me.
Wow. So, for people who are um, new to this concept, you were talking previously about activating other people's kundalini. So, talk a little bit about that. Was that part of the gifts that came through this experience? How are you able to do this? And um, what is that like for your clients?
Yeah. So initially, it definitely wasn't something I knew I could do. It took a lot of learning on my part as far as, I mean, first off, what happened to me? What is Shakti? How do I work with that with myself? And then very quickly, a mentor came into my space who was a shaman, and he immediately saw me in my Shakti. And he was the one that taught me that I can activate this in others. And the beauty of it is I don't really have to do anything. It's just in my presence and my activated Shakti that I activate it in others. But I also teach my clients how to breathe into that, how to feel it in their bodies, how to recognize it in their bodies. And then I would say more importantly, how to work with that energy as she begins to rise, because she's very powerful and we want to breathe into her and work with her. As I mentioned, as she moves through the chakras, she'll stop at a chakra, and your introspection, your self-awareness will be really pulled into the representation, the symbolism of that chakra in your life. So I teach my clients how to really work with that energy. And of course, it's so life changing for them as well. And then they start activating people as well.
Wow, that's beautiful. So you mentioned earlier that this feminine energy it exists in everybody, whether you're male or female. Um, but I understand that there is a role, the womb has a role here. And I'm curious, the womb in terms of creativity and in this energy. And so is that just for women? Does that express it in a different way for men? Can you talk a little bit about the role of the womb?
Yeah, really great question. And first, speaking to women, we have literally an organ in our body that takes ethereal energy and creates physical form. And to me, that is the epitome of magic. That is the epitome of creation. And women in our modern society have not been taught to recognize this power, to honor this power, and to work with this power, that you hold this organ of creative life force energy. And when we understand how to utilize that, and that the womb has a portal into the cosmic womb, into the great womb of the universe, there's really nothing that we can't create. And when we combine that with our heart, which is where our soul resides, and all the information about what our soul truly desires, I call them heart's desires, to create in this life, that is our unique genius. We connect these two, and then we connect it to our third eye. This is what I call the three creator centers. Our third eye is our vision and our intellect, our inspiration, and our mind. We're really in our creator power. And we can create. We are so limitless in our capacity to create. So, with the womb for women, there's a lot of wisdom. And wisdom is the feminine, and women are the bearers. We are the carriers of that wisdom. And there is a lot to be said about what happens with women, as we go from being children, we enter into our menstruation. There is a great deal of power in learning how to work with our cycles. And, that there are 4 parts to our cycle. Each part has its own flavor, its own essence, and it brings skill and opportunity for you. And that, when we're in our menstruation, women are connected very deeply to ancestor energies and gifts, and we're very, very in our oracle capacity. So women in tribes, used to get together into the red tent, and the energy that is cultivated in that space, for one, is massively healing for the entire tribe. And two, again, is oracle. So we can really receive information and guidance in a multidimensional level to where should we move next? Where is that creative energy desiring to go? So really, we're the bearers of that wisdom. Men have what's called a hara, which is like the energetic center that would be the representation of that in the womb. And so they too, of course, have the capacity to create exactly what they desire. And we can't deny that there's something different there with regards to the fact that they do not have a menstrual cycle. And so, men in tribal circumstances would go on what's called vision quests. So men would need to go on vision quests. They tend to not eat, they tend to be out in the elements and kind of really strip themselves of everything. And really what they do is they surrender into Gaia, which is the mother, so that they can harness that power of vision, of oracle capacity. And that's how they would go about that same energy. But women, we can enter that every single month. And we have this death and rebirth energy that we're constantly connected to. And so there's so much power and wisdom held in the womb that, as I mentioned, in modern society, we just haven't been taught. And therefore, we've kind of lost connection to that.
I love that. Thank you. And when you were talking about that, my womb got really cool.
Yeah,
I could feel like this coolness just entering through. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. Do you have any tips for how people can start to embody their womb in a more productive way?
Absolutely. Just awareness of it. I mean, just like what you experienced is so beautiful. And, breathing, the breath is such a powerful tool that we have always with us. It's always there. It's free. And the breath is connecting our subconscious and conscious minds, our ethereal bodies and our physical bodies. And we can just breathe. And, I really enjoy placing my left hand over my womb, my right hand over my heart. But you can do anything that you want with that. And just holding your awareness, focusing your attention at your womb and breathing. And as you inhale, you're expanding your awareness, you're expanding into her, you're expanding that energy of the womb. And as you exhale, you're letting go, you're releasing, you're softening. And just holding your awareness. My Shakti just starts to light up. But just holding your awareness there and breathing will start the conversation, because your womb has a lot to say. And if you just connect with her a couple of breaths throughout the day, you'll start to feel her, you'll start to hear her, and then that's when you really start to tap into that inner wisdom.
I love that. I am curious, you talked at one point earlier on about the safety of the Kundalini, but I know that there are some kind of watch outs with Kundalini activation. And we have things like Kundalini yoga. We've got people that are actively trying to awaken this, and sometimes you hear about those things going sideways. Talk about the risks, the rewards, that kind of, watch outs, or ways that people can just be thoughtful in how they awaken this energy.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. Yeah, it's interesting if you Google it, there's a lot of beware. And from my perspective, a lot of it has to do with attempting to control her. She is consciousness. And really, we don't have to do anything except really be in the presence of our bodies and of our awareness and let her do her thing. So humanity is so good at, okay, we want to do this. Let's jump in and let's control it. And we do that out of fear of the unknown, which is exactly what the feminine represents. So it's ironic. And she will not be controlled. And so a lot of even the modalities that I've seen online of ways to work with your Kundalini is a level of control, is a level of manipulation. And I'm all about, we breathe into her, we hold space for her, hands off. We let her do her thing, her wisdom, her intelligence, and she will move where she needs to go. And so I bring that forward as from my perspective, the primary cause of some of that distortion and some of those, as you mentioned, going sideways. And just like with anything in our personal development, even outside of spirituality, are we going to hit levels of discomfort, right? Are we going to hit challenge with Shakti? Most likely, yes, because that is the evolution of self. No matter what you do in life, if you are attempting to, improve yourself, expand yourself, up level, you are going to hit challenge and discomfort. And one of the things I always teach is what I call spiritual kung fu, which is about relaxation. Relaxation is different than rest. Rest is like you're just hanging out on the couch. Relaxation is, as a kung fu master, so to speak, you can be highly engaged in the moment, deeply present, available to anything that's coming at you, but you are in a state of deep presence and relaxation. This happens through the release of tension in the body, the release of emotional tension and mental tension in the body. And through relaxation, we can get there a lot through the breath. We create the space for energy to move easily, effortlessly, any energy, any emotion, any discomfort. And so I point this towards Shakti, but really it's a gift for all of our experiences in life. When we hit discomfort, when we hit challenge, we tend to tense. And again, that can be physical tension, and you'll find usually it's the anus is the first thing to tense. But we can also tense emotionally and tense mentally. Or we're overanalyzing. We have to figure it out. We got to, get it all right. All of that is tension. Whereas if we breathe and we soften and we relax, we create spaciousness for that to move. And then the Shakti isn't uncomfortable.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I don't even know if you're going to have any comments on this. I'm going to throw it out there and I can edit it out later. But ancient Egypt and like the Mayan culture and all of the serpent
Lineages.
Sorry, what'd you say? Images?
Lineages.
Oh, lineages. Yeah, but like the petroglyphs and so forth, where we see so many serpents, so many things, and we know or understand. A lot of people understand the pyramids as ascension chambers, and the continued representation of the serpent. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that or not, but that just kind of came up in my mind. So.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. That is the representation of the Kundalini Shakti, which ancient Egypt studied. I don't know so much about the Mayans. I haven't really, but ancient Egypt called it Sekhem. It was the energy, but it was the same thing. It was the coiled serpents, and it was the evolution up the body. And, there's more than one channel of Shakti. We speak to it often as one, but there's actually multiple serpents that move up through the body. And it's quite fascinating when you then think about, and this is just food for thought, you think about Adam and Eve and the serpent, who represented this, forbidden fruit, right? And it makes you wonder, what is the true story of that when you really understand that the serpent energy is really our energy of liberation into divine union.
Yes. Yeah. So many representations. And actually, as we're talking, I'm remembering that I had a snake in my dream last night. I was a
Yes.
passenger in a car, and there was a snake right next to me on the, right at the ledge of the window. And I remember thinking, somebody else was driving, and I was like, "Oh, we've got the snake here. Don't forget." It's just, it's like, don't forget about the snake. It's right here. And I think we got out of the car, and I was like, "Oh, the snake's still in there. We've got." Anyway, really funny how these things just show up, and here we are talking about serpents.
Yeah, and obviously that's your energy speaking to you, right? Because that's how she always shows up, as she will show up as different ways of snakes. So many times I've opened doors, walked out, there's a snake right there, and just the different ways that she's brought snakes. And the other thing to understand, there's been a lot of talk about dragons in the spiritual community of late, and those are highly related, the serpent and the dragon energy as well.
Would you like to speak about that?
I don't know a great deal about it. Conceptually, I have just seen the energies and been shown it energetically.
It's fascinating that you bring that up, though, because I just had the same sort of realization, or the same, just a couple of days ago, where because my friend gave me these party cocktail napkins, and it said something about this is a dragon party or something. Okay, it was like a funny napkin, but anyway, it just talked about a magical party dragon type of thing. And I had dragons on my mind, and then I was like, oh, the dragon and the serpent, the snake, how do those go together? And it was I could tell there was a connection, but it was well, how did we get to the dragon with the wings, and it has legs, but it very much is serpentine? They're both reptilian, kind of skin. Yeah. And so it's real. I love that you brought that up, because it was also something kind of in my consciousness too. What's going on there? I am curious about your thoughts with how wealth is related to our sexual energy.
This is a topic that I'm super passionate about because of my own personal journey. So after all of that happened to me in 2021, I went through another transformation where all of my money was stolen.
Oh my gosh.
And I was told it was going to happen to me right before. And so I was somewhat mentally prepared, but I had been ignoring the levels of shame that I was carrying around in my sexual energy, and the inadequacy that was held in my womb. So unworthiness and inadequacy is held in the womb, or the Hara center. And, I've always been able to just create what I want very easily. And so I just was kind of like, this is really easy. Life is easy. And then as that happened, I had to face that within myself. And initially I was like, oh, I got this. I'm going to just totally create it again. That's not what happened. Instead, my entire business crumbled and everything kind of collapsed underneath me. And I was forced to look at the shame in my body and in my sexual energy. And it's something that I didn't even know that I really had. And as I work with women, it's amazing. And I've done this with men too. They're all like, no, I'm good. I don't have any shame. And then as we get into the energy, whoa. Because let's be real. Where in our society have we been taught that sexual energy is innocent, which it is? We haven't been taught that, right? It's wrong, it's bad, hide it behind the doors, don't do it until you're this, only okay in these circumstances. Meanwhile, it's innocent. It's innately just who we are as beings. It's all over. The universe is sexual. Everything is sexual. But humanity has made it this very specific thing that is largely taboo to talk about, forbidden in so many ways. So we all carry this shame in our sexual energy. And sexual energy is, guess what? Creative life force energy. It's not separate from Shakti. So I like to say, if you imagine a circle being your sexual energy, that's encapsulated in your Shakti. All sexual energy is Shakti, but not all Shakti is sexual. And so power, true personal power, not what we've seen in our society, which is largely the energy of force, not power. True personal power, which is, really rooted in the service of all, the service to one, the one and only. Wealth, which is abundance, which is infinite, inexhaustible wealth, which is the feminine. The feminine is inexhaustible wealth and resource. And sexual energy are all the same. They're all the same. And I had no idea that that was the case. So as I lost my money and then my business crumbled, I tried all my ways of like creating abundance, and none of them were working. And my higher self just kept taking me to my sacral chakra, kept taking me to my sexual relationship with myself and my partner, kept taking me deep into my cervix, into past lives where I had been sex slaves and all this energy in this life where I'd been sexually molested, all of this to release the shame so that my empowerment could once again, my sexual power, I could be empowered within that energy and thus in my feminine and thus in my wealth. And I believe that our future is going to be in this, that we as humans are going to be understanding this more deeply, and we're going to be creating wealth through the reclamation of our sexual power in its innocence.
That's beautiful. So what did that look like for you? Because you said like you kept being guided into the sacral and into the cervix. So as you were doing that healing, what was the external reflection that you were experiencing through that?
There were so many. I mean, first and foremost, of course, right before it all happened, I met a man who is like, we are just such soul partners. And he had a very, very high sexual energy. And it triggered me so deeply to I'd always been sexual, but I'd been really shut down sexually. So I'd had this kind of like push-pull with it my whole life, and I didn't understand it. And honestly, sex had never really felt good to me, even though I like desired it. And I didn't understand. And here he came into my life. I was super sexually attracted to him. And then I just kept hitting myself, Every time we would go into the act of sex, sometimes I would get triggered so deeply that I would go into this black space and I would shut down completely. Like everything would go black. I felt like I would drop down into a black hole and I couldn't talk or move.
Wow.
And, I had to teach him, this is not about you. I am working through trauma. And I just need you when I go into that space, not to try to talk to me because I can't answer. Don't abandon me. Just hold me. Be there with me. And we did that. And I stopped going into those spaces, but I still had to. There was so much. We would go into the act of sex and, I would have to communicate to him what I was feeling. I taught him how to touch me and how to work with my physical body because I had a lot of stored trauma in there that I didn't even know, Kara. It was from other lives, some of this stuff. My G-spot was like, I didn't realize how much it felt like sandpaper until I released all the stored trauma out of it. And I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like.
Wow.
It's supposed to feel good. Like, no wonder sex has always been like this weird space for me. My cervix was totally closed. So I taught my partner how to touch me and how to be present with me. And I would go through these energies of rage and screaming and crying and all this space. And, I'm so grateful for him. I would do the work on myself individually as well. There was one point where my higher self, just through meditation, started showing me the life where I was a sex slave, and it was in my cervix. And there was all this shame, and like I get my resources, my food, my well-being by giving away sex, whether I wanted or not, to this man, and all of the psychological distortions of sex slavery. I was in a harem. And as I was working in this energy, my mother was also in that life with me. She wasn't my mother. She was just another woman. And I was working in my cervix and like releasing this shame over a couple of weeks. And, at this point in my life, this was a couple of years ago, I was in a good relationship with my parents at this time. I still am, but we'd gone through some hard spots. And I speak to them, but I don't speak to them like all the time. My dad called me and he said, I have something to tell you. And I was like, yeah, what? And he's like, your mother was just diagnosed with cervical cancer. I didn't even know she was sick.
Oh my God.
Because it's a very, very aggressive cancer. And I was like, I know exactly why she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. I don't hide anything from my parents. And I was like, yes, we shared a life where we were sex slaves and there's all this energy. And I had to resolve the energy first in my energy. And then I went to visit her and there was all this healing that happened. And very, very profound work. And, just the understanding of the ways that I have unconsciously used my sexual energy to manipulate, to do all kinds of things in this life just because I didn't understand. And really, coming back into that reclamation and kind of the end of it. And not to say that I'm completely done with it. I always think it's a journey.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was profound. I've really loved this conversation. Alara, can you please tell people how they can find out more about you and connect with you?
Absolutely. alarasage.com is my website. I'm on Facebook, Alara Sage, and Instagram, Alara Sage.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful discussion, and thank you for all the work that you're doing with everybody.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful questions. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode of Meditation Conversation. I'd be so grateful if you would share this episode with someone in your life who would appreciate it. You may not realize just how valuable your sharing is, as it helps to build momentum and make high vibrational content such as this more accessible and easier to find. I'd also be so grateful for you to subscribe to this content. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to the next meditation conversation.